changing that practice in the Western world. Is that something you believe
I
in?
think that women have to be covered to be modest. Yes. I think that modesty has got. I don't know whether you've been on the beach in Michigan lately, but the bathing suits are what I would call immodest. It's that simple. I think that one of the first impressions I had when I went to Iran was that the public sphere had been desexualized because the women were covered up. Now, that's a big battle in Iran, too. I mean, there are lots of women who don't want to wear the chador in Iran, uh, the hijab, I mean, or the hijab and the chador. That's being weaponized by the CIA into these revolutions, the revolution against the government. It's a contentious issue, but to to say that because they wear the chador and the hijab uh, is something that's I don't think it's objectionable.
Gavin, I thank you for hosting the space. I have to say that I find this to be a very dangerous conversation, particularly for women. And I'm sorry about that. That's
That's your
just a
opinion.
reality, and
That's your opinion.
it is my
Yes,
it is my opinion.
your
Thank you.
opinion. Your opinion
Thanks.
only.
That's grand, Patricia. We'll just go on to Honey Badger there, please, next.
Hey, well, thank you. Good to see you, Gabon. Doctor, such a pleasure to meet you. I really enjoyed your post the other day about Candace and especially coming to her defense. And I would like, can everybody hear me? Dominique, can you hear me right now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So going back, and so uh, after this lady just spoke, I would like to point something out to anybody who's Catholic in the space. This is what always happens. We get conflated with either Jews or Muslims. We are Catholic. We are Christian. We believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist, and to Jesus through Mary, his mother. So we are not on one side or the other. We are on our side. And every time that we're in a space, and we a bunch of us just happened to be in a space, and it was the one actually you were hitting on in your post, where we were being sort of pulled to one side and then taken to task and really kind of beaten over the head with a club about being Catholics. Fortunately, they were very well ordered, very devout, educated Catholics in the room, and it didn't work, for lack of a better way of saying it. But this is the thing. The problem is, at the same time, us. It's us. We can't get on our own side, and you have so many poorly catechized Catholics that don't know what they believe, don't know what church teaching is. And by the way, happy feast day, Pope Pius X. He has a lot to say about that. And I would also, well, to do the root cause analysis that you sort of started down, um, Doctor, I would say, Dr. Jones, I remember in the 70s, and I was just a little girl, there was something called in the United States, and there was something called the Catholic Charismatic Renewal. And it was very alive and active in places like where I went to school, which was Franciscan University. It was like Hippieville, if that's the best way I can put it. You started to see these mega Catholic churches and these Catholic, Christian communities, this guitar mass. It was as Protestant can be. There was hierarchies inside of these communities. It was so schismatic, it was ridiculous, but the damage had been done. And that was the main departure, from our traditions. But like again, the Novus Ordo, it was it was traditional, and then it went to entertaining, like almost overnight. But I would say that was the really acceleration of the downfall. Aside from what a lot of people rightly, I guess, critique Vatican II is sort of the Catholic Church trying to assimilate with uh, society, rather like instead of vice versa. I think that if I'm understanding in the best way possible that critique of Vatican II, I could definitely understand that. So what would you say? And again, now I'm seeing like my own son, who's 28, he's Latin Mass with his wife, having a baby. I think you're really hitting the nail on the head about how traditional the future will be. And I think that there's always a, part of that perhaps is logical, it's an opposite and equal reaction to when things go crazy. And then finally, I would like your thoughts, final thing, and thank you for letting me talk so long, Gaman. What are your thoughts of Cardinal Sarah? Because I really do, do like him a lot.
He's the perfect example of the African Catholic. Is conservative on these sexual issues. They're totally repugnant to him, and he just, speaks from the heart in a kind of automatic kind of reaction to this. So that's good, because that's why we need a universal church, because you need for people from all over to kind of balance one part off against the other. But you brought up the charismatic movement. That's an important point. Because I live in South Bend, Indiana. This was one of the headquarters of the charismatic movement. During the 1970s, they would get 50,000 people to show up at Notre Dame Stadium. And what was it? What was it? I think it was basically a reaction to the chaos. I think it was one of many, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, 12-step programs. A lot of these things were simply reaction to the collapse of Catholic culture, traditional Catholic culture in cities across America. One of the main causes for the charismatic movement was Notre Dame University. And I'm talking specifically about people I know who were there. Next, the sexual revolution hit Notre Dame University like a tsunami in the late 1960s, like a tsunami. People were swept away.
And it sort of bled into Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. It kind of bled there too.
Well, it was all over the country. It was a tsunami of sexual revolution. And so as a result, a lot of these people were young Catholics, went there thinking they were going to get a Catholic education, and they were betrayed by the priest, the Holy Cross priest. Father Burchell, the late Father Burchell, had a role to play, undermined their faith in all of the traditional teachings of the church, the resurrection, you name it. He undermined their teaching. They were clueless. When they're clueless, they're off balance and they fall into sexual sin. And then they realize that their lives have been wrecked and their lives are out of control and they need someone to take control of their lives. And they become charismatics. The charismatic community here would take people and you come here, you move into this house, and we'll tell you when to get up in the morning and when to go to bed at night and how to brush your teeth in between. That's what the charismatic community here, the People of Praise, was doing to people who had been totally unmoored and disconcerted by the betrayal of the Catholic faith that took place at places like Notre Dame. That was an emotional religion. Basically, what happened at this point, it's in Kevin Ranahan's book. He wrote the book, basically said, well, he was a professor at Notre Dame, he's the leader of the charismatic movement in South Bend, the People of Praise. He said, well, you have reason, but we have faith. Well, no, it doesn't work that way if you're a Catholic. Maybe if you're a Protestant, some type of evangelical, which is where the charismatic movement came from. But we believe in faith and reason. We believe you have to have both. And so you had an emotional reaction that could not really survive over the long haul. And I think that's what happened. It got picked up when it ran out of steam here. The next thing that came along was Medjugorje, which was a phony apparition in Yugoslavia. And that had aspects of the charismatic movement, and it combined it with Marian piety. And it was a powerful weapon, especially since it was being backed by the CIA as a way of bringing down communism in Eastern Europe. That took off. But these things don't last because they have no roots. They're not really Catholic in their orientation. Medjugorje looked hyper-Catholic, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was something else. And so what you have here is the history of post-Vatican II, is the history of these movements that are basically reacting to the loss of Catholic identity. I think that's what's happening. That's the book I'm trying to write now about American identity, but Catholic identity is part of it. We have to regain our identity as Catholics, which means we don't have to be conservative. You don't have to be a neoconservative. This was when the 1980s, when Reagan was president and Pope John Paul II was Pope, and we were fighting communism. Those days are gone. You don't have to be a conservative. You can't be a liberal if what you mean by that is a Democratic Party, but you don't have to be a conservative. The fact that we're going to political parties for our identity means that we lack a Catholic identity, because the matrix was destroyed. And the matrix was the Catholic neighborhood, the Catholic community. It was all destroyed by social engineering, and people were set adrift. And we've had generations of identity theft as the result.
You know, and one last thing, and thank you again. I'll let somebody else speak. So, if you have never seen the documentary "Liberating a Continent," it's the sort of a biography of Saint John Paul II's life. It's extraordinarily inspiring, and it shows exactly what was needed to fight communist power. It couldn't be done by force. It had to be done by supernatural means. And I would really invite anybody who hasn't watched that documentary to watch it, because, as you said, it's not conservative, it's not liberal. It is, it is the Holy Spirit rightly ordered by the Bride of Christ, who is the Catholic faith. Thank you so much, Doctor.